Hey, what's up, everybody? Paul K. Saturday Mornings Outdoors. What I'd like to do on this episode is for you canal guys and just surf fishermen that are considering going to conventional reels in the surf, which is an excellent decision, by the way, and I'll explain all that. And I'd like to show you the succession of improvements of uh, standard reels for surf over the decades. And so if you're interested in this, stay tuned, and I'll show you some stuff that you might not have known about these reels and what makes them one of the best reels out there, period, for saltwater casting. So stay tuned and let's go. So first question is, why would you consider a conventional reel? Because it's so much easier with a spinning reel. And the reason is that conventional reels are extremely strong. They're winches, basically. And the second point is absolutely will change your mind about these reels is the world's distance casting, surf casting distance was made on a conventional reel, and there's reasons for that. I had Ron Ara on the show last year. I was fortunate enough to bump into him at the Cape Cod Canal, and he explained a lot of stuff to me and showed me the proper way for distance casting, and I was grateful to have met him. But so the idea is that in spinning reels, even on long cast spinning reels, they're daggone good, and I've got many of them, but the line coming off that spool in the shape that it is facing outward and comes off the spool that way, the line on a cast, and goes through the guides, and you get a pretty good distance on it. But the reason why these will always outcast them is when you do a cast, these operate differently than a spinning reel. Spinning reels, that's how they operate. The line kind of falls off the front of the reel in the position that it is. With these, you need heavier weights, basically conventionals. They're for casting bait and for lures, but they're for them to operate properly, they need slightly heavier weights because the weight of the lure is crucial in pulling the line off the spool. That's how these work. And so technically, why you are getting long distance, as soon as you cast with your bait rig, say, with these, the spool starts picking up centrifugal force, and it's literally feeding the line through the guides, and therefore you're going to get much more distance because there's less friction there. Nothing's touching the line except for slightly movement through the guides. And then, but the rub is that you have to learn how to cast these, because once the lure or bait hits the water, the reel still the spool is still cranking along, so you have to stop this, slow it down. Otherwise, you're going to get the bird's nest or bird's nest, but it's well worth learning how in literally 2 hours of using these. Don't let them scare you off. It's worth it for the distance and the power that you get on these reels. The feathering technique, it's a very simple thing. Once the lure hits the water, you pick it up like throwing a baseball. You don't even think about it, and you feather it just as it touches the water, and that slows this down, the spool down, and keeps it from overrunning. So let's get on with the history of some of these reels. Since the 30s, this is the Penn Squidder, and it is. I have used these for decades and decades, and I still use them. This is probably, in my mind, the quintessential casting reel. Once you learn how to thumb that and keep it from overrunning, these reels are just so easy to maintain. They have a 3-screw takedown, and you grease everything up inside and clean it. Of course, you rinse off all these reels after saltwater use. But this reel here, more fishermen have used this, and it's a multi-purpose reel too. Not only casting, but you can use it for dropping on boats, just straight down fishing. And but this was, everyone used this in the 40s, 50s, 60s, this style of reel, and casting wise. Now, what I want to mention right off the bat is these don't really belong here. These are level lines. And the reason why you don't want these for casting is because they're not long distance. If you're satisfied with shorter casts, these are fine. And these are really kind of like training wheels. This moves back and forth and keeps your line stacked on your reel perfectly straight, and you're generally going to have a very level spool with using one of these. But the difference is between these and these without that moving line minder is that these reels, this slows it down. This slows the cast down, and you're going to lose 20 yards on your cast just because of that. So it depends on the purpose you want to do. If you're satisfied with relatively short casts, this is the way to go. And it's kind of like a beginner reel because it's for people that don't want to learn how to stack the line themselves. And you will eventually graduate to these because you'll want distance and the power. And speaking of stacking the line, the proper way, well, everyone that I know, the old salts, and I was taught this, is you don't want it level. You want it like a pyramid. You want to stack the line in a V shape on top, and that minimizes the chances of the lines getting in the edges here and hanging up on a cast. If you stack it in a pyramid when you're reeling it in, as you're reeling it, you're moving. You're the level winder. You're moving this, and it becomes second nature, literally in a half an hour. But if you learn that you want to stack it in a pyramid, you'll never get a backlash. You'll never, because of that, for that point. So the Penn Squitter is just an incredible reel. It's got the clicker, a very standardized reel. It's got a star drag, and this is your casting and retrieving lever. That'll put it in free spool, and pulling it back will put it back into gear. And this is a anti-reverse. You can backpedal if you hit that. The reel will go backwards and forwards if you want to fight the fish that way. Other than that, that's it. It's a very standard reel, but it is an absolute built bulletproofly. Of all these reels, of all the technical stuff that's put in these reels, this right here, the simple design, in my mind, is the quintessential reel in the surf. So late 60s and 70s. Now see, this reel, it's also a Penn Squitter, but they had trick out kits. These are called Newells or Tiburons, and what you're doing is you're replacing these rails with these aluminum. It makes this super, super sturdy. Not that there was much of a problem with it with this design, but this added super stability, but mainly when you put this in free spool, that thing, when it's adjusted properly, will keep spinning for 40 seconds. It just balances this on an absolute pinnacle of movement, and that's why everyone loved this. This was the next step up. I believe it was around the 70s everyone started going with this. You could buy this frame, and they also had a larger handle to increase the line take-up. How many feet per revolution that you could reel in, but I never went for that. I just stuck with one of these. That was the next step. So next in the line of surf casting, around, I believe it was the late 90s, this is the Penn Squall 15. And what's different about this, it's got magnetic braking. So instead of using your finger, or in conjunction with using your finger to slow down the revolutions, you can adjust this. It's a magnetic braking system. How you adjust this, when this is at peak revolutions and you want it to start slowing down, these magnets kick in and will slow it down, so there's very little chance of you getting a backlash ever. And it really works. It really, really works. This is a great invention, this magnetic centrifugal way to slow down the spool. Other than that, it's pretty much standardized. This knob adjusts how well this spins, And the maintenance of these are, everything else is the same. Star drag, it's got the lever, for cast, and got the clicker on there. And that was the Penn Squall 1. That's the Penn Squall 1. That was the step up from the Tiburon. Everyone that loves conventional, and my specialty is Cape Cod, Outer Cape, and the Cape Cod Canal. This is what we used through the years, and most guys that like conventionals. There's plenty of other quality reels that are out there, but these were the mainstays, the Penns. So this is the Penn Squall 2, and this is the Star Drag. Got the same thing. The difference between the 1 and the 2 is that it's very simple to do, but you can stack the drag washers inside there. They have a different effect on how the drag operates on the Penn Squall, and it's generally the same reel for the most part. Other than that, it's just different color scheme and all that, but it's got the magnetic drag and the clicker and the star drag and so forth and so on. And that's where we're at today. This just came out. Okay, and so now the past few years, there's a company called Avid, and these guys are killing it. These would be kind of akin to the Van Stalls, because these are one-piece frames of aluminum billet stock, and they're a little pricey, but there's a reasoning behind that. What justifies you spending hundreds of dollars on this type of reel? It's generally the same as all these other conventionals, but you're never going to buy another one of these again in your life. That's the idea. And that's the same with the Van Staal. And before I dropped $900 or $1,000 on the Van Staal, I'm like, I got to be crazy. I don't really get the reason why these have to cost $1,000, but the thing is, it's the workmanship. The tolerances on these are ridiculous, and this spool can be adjusted. It's like 3 minutes that thing will keep spinning. It's also got a magnetic spool, slower downer. It's totally adjustable. And it's a very basic reel, but the tolerances, you will not need another one of this stock. Once you drop the money on this, you're not going to need another one the rest of your life. They're easy to maintain, and the Avid has a ridiculous, I'm not sponsored by anybody, but they have a ridiculously lenient service program, how these run. So, how they service these and everything. But it's a very basic reel, the Star Drag, and the magnetic overrun, and then the lever here that is for casting and free spool. And this one adjusts the tension of the spool of how quickly that it's going to go. It's also very much narrower, but you know what I find, of course, and I've always thought this about all reels. Most of the stuff is backing. You're only using like 125 maximum feet of line. Everything else under there is buried. So this makes more sense. Make it narrower. It still holds a ton. You're still going to need a backing on there, but it's just like that stuff's a waste of time. All this, everything under there, a waste of line. I find myself at the middle of the season having to pull all this line off, tie it to a fence out in the backyard, and switch the ends just to get my nickels worth, because everything under that 125 yards, it's virgin line. It's never been touched. This makes more sense. It's a narrower spool. Plus, you can get your finger in there easier. There are earlier models. When I say you use your finger to feather that, it's kind of unique what they used to do. They would build the spools like this. It looks just like that, but it would come with a thick, these are probably 20s, 30s, and 40s. It would have a that thick piece of rawhide or leather, and they put it right there, and it was attached to this. Because back then the lines were linen lines. They were made out of literally kind of just cloth. Linen lines, not cloth, but they weren't mono or braid, and when you slowed it down, that high centrifugal force, you would burn your thumb. So you either feathered the spool from casting on the side with the edge of your thumb, otherwise you're going to get a blister. So they figured that out, and wimpy people were complaining about it. So these reels would come with a thick hunk of leather attached to that, so that they wouldn't burn their fingers. But it's an interesting concept, and it was around for a while. So if you have an idea that you might want to try these, and they're really worth it, they're like the ultimate casting reel for the surf. You're going to have distance and you're going to have power. If you're going to catch the biggest fish of your life, in the salt, and you're a more advanced fisherman, this is the best chance you got to land in them, as opposed to spinning reels, which are kind of torque and heavy fish. They torque a little bit. And it's not really that significant, but if this is the ultimate for strength and casting distance, that's what you're after. And they look daggone cool. They're some of the coolest looking reels. It looks like a man's reel. So that would be it. We went from the 30s all the way up to today, and you can see the significant changes in the ability of the spools to rotate and the magnetic overrun and the warnings about not buying these type of reels. Those are the most important things that you can take from this. So that would be my little video on the casting reels of the Cape Cod Canal and the Outer Cape, and I'm sure all up and down the coast they use these. They're very popular reels. So I hope you liked that. I hope you got a little bit out of it. And really, if you want the best distance and power, get these reels. This is the style to get. These right here. There's nothing. They're foolproof. They're bulletproof, and they'll last the rest of your life with the proper maintenance. So my name is Paul K. This has been Saturday Mornings Outdoors. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the salt.